Good afternoon and welcome to Open Classroom. I'm Janet Gillow, the Director of Professional Development for the Brown School, Washington University in St. Louis. So glad to have you with us today. I want to acknowledge and thank my co-host, Cynthia Williams, who's the Brown School's Assistant Dean for Community Partnerships, also with us today, and she'll be helping to moderate the chat and representing your questions as the program goes. As members of the audience, you are muted as we're doing this webinar. We can't see or hear you, but the chat function is enabled, and we really do welcome your questions for the instructor about today's presentation and comments. We really do want you to be a part of this conversation. So this is our last program of 2020, and that causes me to be just a little bit reflective. Since we launched this series on March 31st, this is our 80th program. And more than 26,000 of you have participated since we got started. We've learned together, we've shared resources, we've connected with people from, I think, at least 3/4 of the 50 states and about 10 foreign countries. And this has generally made our days, I think, a little less isolated, a little less alone. I have really enjoyed it, and I just wanted to thank you and wish you and yours happy holiday season. We are about to take a 2-week hiatus, but the recordings of all or nearly all of our 80 programs are available on YouTube. So I'm going to throw a link into the chat. If you miss us, you can catch up with something that you missed over the course of 2020. And we are going to be coming back to you on Tuesday, January 5th. Janelle Gibson is going to be delivering a lecture on generational differences, working in teams together effectively. So that is going to be really interesting. We're also working under Cynthia's leadership on a fantastic series for Black History Month, and we're going to be rolling out those announcements really soon, so look for that. But now let's talk about today's presentation. This is the final program in our series, Adaptive Coping and Relaxation Skills for Health and Public Health Professionals. This particular program today is on managing grief and guided imagery. And it's my great pleasure to bring back our speaker, Dr. Megan Keys. She's a clinical psychologist who specializes in the assessment and evidence-based treatment of PTSD. She's got more than 20 years of experience doing that. She's adjunct faculty at the Brown School and also the founder of Trauma Empowered Consulting, which provides education and consultation services to professionals working with trauma survivors. Megan is also one of the instructors in our postmaster certificate in assessment and treatment of PTSD in adults. And we are recruiting now for our fall 21 cohort. So I'm also going to be throwing a link into chat. If you're a clinician interested in deeper PTSD treatment and more advanced skills, glad to have you consider joining us for some more robust training next year. So with that, it's my great pleasure to bring back our friend, a favorite of this series, Dr. Megan Keys.
Thank you so much, Janet and Cynthia. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Open Classroom, and thank you for joining us today. Our goal with this series was to hopefully provide some level of support to health and public health professionals during this pandemic. For those who are not health professionals, we certainly want this information to be useful to you as well. Our primary focus in this series has been learning techniques for managing pandemic-related stress and enhancing emotional well-being. The topics that we'll be covering today are outlined here. Our new set of adaptive coping skills will focus on grief and loss, namely some helpful ways to approach these issues. Our new and final relaxation technique will be guided imagery, and we'll have the chance for everyone to practice that during the second half of today's webinar. So I wanted to start again with a check-in. For those who have attended previous sessions, we've reviewed several strategies for reducing stress over the past 2 weeks, and I just wanted to get a sense of what's been most helpful to people. If this is your first time attending one of these sessions, if you happen to use any of these techniques already or are using something else, please feel free to take part in the poll as well. And finally, I also want to use this as an opportunity for anyone who's had the chance to practice. If you had any questions about your progressive muscle relaxation practice over the past week, we can definitely address those via the chat function.
I give folks about 10 more seconds to reply.
Yeah, it just takes about another minute to get the results. Right. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for everybody who participated. It's like I said, it's just really helpful on our end to get a sense of how things are landing and what people are finding useful. To all of those who are new, thank you so much for joining us. We're so glad you're here and are going to be able to participate today. All right, let's get rid of the results and we'll go ahead and move on. Did anybody, before I move forward, did anybody have any questions or issues that they wanted to raise with regards to any of the techniques they utilized over the past week? And if not, that's okay, because we'll have another open session for questions at the end. I just wanted to check in before we jumped into new material. We good? Good? Okay. All right. Oops. Sorry, this slide is not advancing. There we go. All right, so we decided to focus on loss and grief as our final session because most everyone has likely lost something as a result of the pandemic. So I'd like to start with just briefly describing some of the various types of losses people may have experienced or are experiencing. A primary loss is an individual loss due to death, such as the loss of a loved one, or a major life change, the loss of a job, the loss of a relationship. For individuals who lose a loved one during this pandemic, safety restrictions and social distancing may make this more difficult to cope with due to not being able to be with the person in those final days, or not being able to attend a memorial service or funeral, which often provide people the social support and physical discomfort they need following such a loss. Secondary losses are consequences of primary loss. These losses aren't always immediately apparent and may not emerge until a bit later. The loss of a spouse may result in the loss of companionship. The loss of a job may result in the loss of physical security. Secondary losses are often overlooked because they aren't noticeable at the time that the primary loss occurred. As a result of the pandemic, many may be experiencing a sense of systemic loss. So for example, the disruption of these big established systems that many of us have relied on for a long time, such as our healthcare system, our education system. This type of loss can feel very destabilizing due to the uncertainty of how to proceed as these systems shift and change, as well as about concerns for how these systems will fare over time. Significant stressors or crises, such as COVID-19, can potentially disrupt our most basic understanding of the world and how it operates. This can result in a loss of one's sense of safety, predictability, or control. Many may believe that they can no longer adequately protect themselves or their loved ones. For individuals who are high risk, they may have been experiencing a chronic sense of threat due to fear of infection that could result in significant illness or even death. And finally, and this is the one that I wanted to spend a bit more time on, this is a very common issue that many people may be dealing with called ambiguous loss. So this type of loss lacks the clarity of a single point of loss, such as the loss of a job. It's considered a living loss because it's a loss that keeps going with no clear end in sight. Examples of this could include our loss of certain freedoms due to safety restrictions, our loss of social connections due to distancing. These are one of the more challenging losses to deal with because due to that uncertainty of how long they'll last. There's a lack of closure due to no defined endpoint, which can make moving forward from these losses very difficult. As the pandemic has progressed, many people may have experienced a series of these losses, or maybe anticipating losses that have not yet occurred. The important thing to remember, and the piece that I really want to drive home, is that any of these types of losses may result in grief. Research indicates that our degree of attachment to something impacts our grief reaction. And we aren't just attached to people. We can have a sense of attachment to places, activities, routines, daily or annual rituals. And the loss of any of these can potentially have a significant impact on us. So grief is a natural reaction to loss, and it serves a purpose. Following loss, the grieving process helps individuals accept and adapt to their new reality so that they can move forward again. Grief really provides a transition from what was prior to the loss to what is now after the loss. It's important to give yourself time to make this transition at your own pace. Integrating a loss into your life doesn't happen instantaneously, especially when that loss impacts your day-to-day living. When individuals try to bypass or shortcut the grieving process, this may result in unresolved grief, which can lead to difficulties such as depression or anxiety. This is especially important for our frontline healthcare workers who, due to the intense demands of their jobs or working excessive hours, may not have the time or opportunity to be fully in touch with how losses are impacting them in the moment. The grieving process is multidimensional. It involves much more than just simply an emotional response, and it can include a range of reactions, including feelings of anger and guilt, a sense of disbelief or preoccupation with the loss, difficulty sleeping, lack of energy, and sometimes questioning long-held religious beliefs. The grieving process also involves natural fluctuations. So it's common to experience periods of sadness followed by periods of more positive mood. Another type of grief that many may experience during this pandemic is anticipatory grief, which involves losses that have not yet occurred but are expected. So common examples include the anticipated loss of seasonal routines, such as vacations or holiday traditions, as well as major milestones or life events, such as birthdays, weddings, and graduations. For health professionals, there may be anticipatory grief around patient care regarding those not expected to survive, or about a potential surge in deaths due to cases peaking and an overburdening of a hospital system. The key thing to remember with this is that these grief reactions to anticipated losses are just as real and just as impactful as grief reactions to losses that have already occurred. And finally, I just want to briefly touch on complicated grief, as certain complexities due to the pandemic may increase the risk of this type of grief for some individuals. Complicated grief may result when uncontrollable circumstances surrounding the loss make it very difficult to accept. Some examples include the violent death of a loved one or the death of a child. In the context of our current pandemic, challenges such as not being able to visit a loved one in the hospital or not being present at the time of death may complicate the mourning process. The hallmark of complicated grief is that the intensity of the grief tends to be enduring and interferes with normal day-to-day functioning. So I now want to transition to talk about some potential suggestions for adapting to loss. And I want to start with discussing the option of journaling. So one adaptive coping recommendation is putting words to the experience of loss. Pandemic-related grief may sometimes be experienced as a vague sense of anxiety or sadness due to loss. Journaling is an organized approach to coping with losses. The ability to identify what you're losing and how you're feeling often makes these things feel more manageable, in part because you now have words to discuss them if needed. So one suggestion is to name what you're losing. Write down individual losses that you're personally experiencing, daily routines, hobbies, regular social gatherings, as well as collective losses that others may be experiencing along with you. Those systemic losses, a loss of a sense of normalcy or predictability. Consider how you may best adapt to these losses by using your personal strength and coping skills. Though most of us have never experienced a pandemic of this type, considering how you've successfully navigated previous challenges or struggles can be helpful. Consider how this information can apply to your current difficulties. Who or what was most helpful to you in the past? What did you rely on the most to keep yourself moving forward? The degree to which you can pull on these previous adaptive coping skills and strengths and try to operationalize them and incorporate them into your daily routine to deal with the current struggles you're dealing with can be a helpful way of you adapting to losses and trying to continue to move forward as best you can. With regards to some of the losses you're experiencing, consider what you can do to strengthen these ties. So for example, if you're experiencing a significant sense of loss due to a loss of control, what do you still have the ability to control at a personal level in your day-to-day life? If you're experiencing a great sense of loss regarding social connections, what are ways that you can try to really strengthen social connections with whatever means you still have available to you? Much of this journaling process is about recognizing and acknowledging the loss, but also recognizing and acknowledging what you still have and what you're still capable of doing. With regards to social support, research indicates that social support is key in helping individuals move forward through grief. Although safety restrictions and distancing may limit social interactions, remaining socially engaged is critical. So even if virtual is your only option, regularly, daily connecting with others via phone, text, video, or social media is important. Research from previous disasters indicates that ongoing social support is needed even after the event has resolved. Many of these pandemic-related losses may have enduring effects for some time. Therefore, continuing to seek support as well as offer support after safety restrictions are lifted is important. And finally, I just want to briefly touch on psychotherapy. With regards to complicated grief, psychotherapy is considered the gold standard treatment for this issue, and there are evidence-based treatments to address complicated grief. However, if you're experiencing significant grief or distress related to loss, it can certainly be worthwhile considering counseling or psychotherapy. A key part of the psychotherapy process is providing a framework for you to be able to process the loss as well as the feelings associated with it. Now, this is a repeat from previous weeks because I just want to ensure anyone new gets this information. Once again, part of adaptive coping is recognizing when professional assistance may be warranted. Here are some potential indicators to keep in mind regarding whatever kind of changes or symptoms you may experience. If these symptoms start to occur more often than not over an extended period of time, if these changes start to feel unmanageable and out of control, or are creating conflict in your relationships, if the changes are preventing you or keeping you from doing things that you want or need to do, and finally, if the changes involve any safety concerns, thoughts of hurting yourself or others, frequent thoughts of death and dying, even vague better off dead feelings. These are all indications that seeking professional assistance may be helpful, at least for an evaluation to determine what's going on. For those considering psychotherapy or considering treatment, just please be aware that there are many time-limited, evidence-based treatments for a range of issues, including depression, anxiety, insomnia, and complicated grief. When searching for a therapist, this resource from Psychology Today is very helpful. It allows you to search a range of clinicians based on the type of mental health provider you're seeking and your location. And then finally, I always like to ensure that people have access to a crisis line if needed. So the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is a 24/7 confidential resource for individuals in crisis or with a loved one in crisis. Their website also offers a wide range of resources. I would encourage you just to consider putting this phone number and address into the contact list on your phone, just so that you have it at your fingertips should you ever want or need it for yourself or a loved one. All right, so with regards to resources, these various websites and articles offer additional suggestions for coping with loss and potential grief reactions. So I just wanted to make sure people had access to that if this is something you'd like to learn more about. And finally, I wanted to mention this now, just in case we're running short on time at the end. This is the book that I used as the primary resource for all of our relaxation techniques in this series. It is a self-help workbook, so it's designed for personal use. As a clinician, I've been using this book in my practice since the early 2000s, so well over 15 years. The most recent edition was just published in 2019, so it is up to date with regards to research. It provides a wide range of stress reduction and relaxation techniques, including mindfulness and meditation. And it also has chapters dedicated to other things such as anger management, time management, and assertiveness. And there is the Amazon link just to make things easy in case that is something you are interested in purchasing. All right, so let me just, back up. Let me just pause for 1 minute. That kind of concludes our adaptive coping skills module for today, but I do want to check in just in case anybody had questions or comments, anything that you'd like addressed before we move into our new relaxation technique. And we can certainly utilize chat for this function.
There's one question, Megan, and that question is, I don't have the supports. No. I have many supports that many of my friends do not have. I feel guilty about that. Can you help me feel better?
So I think that the guilt a lot of time goes kind of hand in hand when dealing with loss and stress and kind of people close to you that may not necessarily have the resources that you have. One of the things that we know and that research has shown is that offering support or providing support for others is something that can really help kind of decrease negative emotions and enhance positive mood. So I do think that if there are times where you feel like you might be able to check in on someone or touch base with someone or even just send an encouraging word or a meme, something just to show that you're thinking of them, that can sometimes go a really long way. When we look a lot about the lack of social connection that people may no longer have due to social distancing, but also the degree to which people are trying to utilize the resources available to them, some of the things we're seeing right off the bat are people are using social media much more. There are certain types of apps and I think like WhatsApp, some of those where people are trying to engage much more virtually. So I do think that's something that you could consider as an option as a way to kind of lend some support to others. That may be a way also that could kind of help alleviate some of the feelings that you're having.
That was excellent, Megan. Thank you so much. We don't have any additional questions in the chat. Janet has reposted the resource link that you provided.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, if we're ready to move on, we'll go ahead and transition into the second half so we can get started with our new relaxation skill. All right. So with regards to guided imagery, or visualization, I'm going to use the words interchangeably, is intentionally creating mental images or pictures to achieve a specific goal, such as changing your behavior, changing your feelings, or changing your internal physiological state. Athletes use imagery to enhance performance, and performers use it to heighten focus. Visualization is used to help medical patients prepare for surgery and to bolster the effects of chemotherapy. Imagery has been found to be effective in treating headaches, chronic pain, and anxiety. It's also used for stress reduction and to enhance emotional well-being, such as increasing optimism or self-confidence. For our purposes today, we'll be using imagery to promote relaxation. So, we all use visualization. When you think about what items you need to pick up from the store, you typically see pictures of those items in your mind. If you call a loved one and they answer the phone, this typically elicits an image of that person in your head, even though you can't see them. We tend to think in images, but imagery is not just visual. Imagery is any perception that comes through any of our senses, including what we hear, smell, touch, and taste. So, how does creating a peaceful image in our mind result in us feeling more relaxed? Because our body doesn't necessarily discriminate between sensory images in our mind and the actual sensory experience. Therefore, sensory images tend to have a very similar impact on our body as the actual experience. The impact from the imagery isn't as intense as the real life event, but it elicits the same quality of experience in the body. So consider when you're at a restaurant and you sit down and open the menu to decide what you want to order. You may notice that just reading the descriptions of the different dishes makes you acutely hungry. You may even notice that your mouth starts to water. This is because as you read those words, your mind is creating images of how those different dishes may look, smell, taste, maybe even how they will feel in terms of the texture in your mouth. And our bodies respond to these images. So guided imagery for relaxation simply builds on this process by guiding your imagination towards calm and peaceful imagery, which if you were to experience in real life would likely elicit a sense of relaxation. So there's various options for creating imagery for relaxation. When first starting out, it can be helpful to listen to a script that guides you through a specific image, and that's what we'll be doing today during our practice. But with practice, many people prefer to create their own imagery since these can be highly personalized to a great degree. A common guided imagery technique for relaxation is called creating a special place. It can be real or imagined, that for you would be considered sort of a refuge or a retreat. It can be any place you choose as long as it's relaxing for you. So you may choose to imagine yourself on a beach that you've always wanted to visit. You may create a mental image based on a favorite vacation or special childhood memory. Some individuals opt to create imagery around sitting in their favorite spot in their garden or their yard. Since this technique is based on your imagination, there really are no limits. If you want to imagine yourself floating in space surrounded by stars or lying on the ocean floor watching tropical fish, those are absolute possibilities because again, our body doesn't tend to discriminate between the image in our mind and reality. As long as the scene or setting is relaxing for you, your body's going to respond accordingly. The more vivid and detailed you can make the image, the more it will resemble a real life event and promote a greater sense of relaxation. Therefore, it's important to incorporate all of your senses into the imagery: sight, hearing, smell, touch, and taste if applicable. As much as possible, you really want to imagine how you would be experiencing this place as if you were really there. Using all of your senses makes this imaginary experience more real to your brain. Therefore, your brain is more likely to respond to this imagery as if it were really occurring and send the message to your body to relax. So before we jump into specifically going through instructions for guided imagery, I just want to take a moment to mention the importance of kind of rating your stress level. So rating your stress level before and after practicing these skills can help you make an informed decision about how effective these skills are in reducing your stress. Tracking your stress levels over time is a helpful way to monitor how much your skills improve with practice. So in here, we've been using a basic 0 to 10 scale, with 0 meaning no distress at all, totally relaxed, and 10 being your maximum level of distress. So at a 10, most people are very much feeling stressed, pounding heart, sweaty palms. It can be helpful to personalize your stress scale by thinking of a specific experience or activity that would be your personal 0 and your personal 10. These personal anchors simply serve as reference points so that you can best determine where your stress level falls on the 0 to 10 scale. Okay, so just a few things to note before we review instructions. As always, if at any point during these exercises you feel uncomfortable, you are always welcome to stop. Imagery can come very easily to some individuals, and for others, it simply requires more practice. If you struggle with creating imagery across all of your senses, just try to focus on your strongest sense first, perhaps what you would be seeing, and work with that. A lot of the additional pieces of imagery can come with practice over time. And finally, if you practice these exercises in the weeks to come and experience any type of enduring negative side effects, please consider consulting a physician or healthcare provider. So on the slide, I have the basic instructions for guided imagery for anyone who might be practicing at home or on their own. I'm going to expand on these a bit for the purposes of what we'll be doing in here today. So once again, you do have the option of kind of sitting in your chair or lying down. The main thing that I want is just to ensure that people feel comfortable and that your body is fully supported. So if you want to recline, if you need to grab a pillow to put under your neck or under your knees, do whatever you need to do in these next several minutes just to make sure that you're comfortable and your body weight is fully supported when we get ready to begin this exercise. All right, on the next slide, I'll be providing an image of the relaxing place that we'll be focused on during our guided imagery exercise. You have the option of closing your eyes to kind of fully create that mental image in your mind, or you can simply keep your eyes open and view the image on the screen. With either option, you will still definitely be using your imagination to really place yourself into that setting as if you were really there. So we're going to start with a brief progressive relaxation exercise to build on the skills that we've learned over the past few weeks. For those who are just joining us today, no worries. I'll be providing specific instructions so anyone can follow along. I'm going to ask you to first focus on your breath, just slow, even breathing with your abdomen, feeling your stomach expand as you inhale through your nose, and feeling your stomach drop as you exhale through your mouth. If this is difficult to do or you have difficulty tracking that, just breathe normally. That's not a problem at all. I'll then ask you to progressively focus on different muscle groups in your body and notice if there's any tension or tightness. If so, just try to release that tension and relax those muscles. We'll then progress into our guided imagery technique. I'll be leading you through the image of sitting by yourself on the beach. I'll be asking you to focus on different details of the image, as well as incorporate your senses, sight, smell, hearing, and touch into the imagery as well, as if you were really there. And we'll be doing this exercise for about 12 to 13 minutes total. So this is the image that we'll be using today. And I just want to kind of give everybody a minute to view it before we get started. Okay. Now, if everyone is in position and comfortable, please just check in and rate your current stress level on that 0 to 10 scale. And now you can please either close your eyes or continue to view the screen, and we'll begin. Settle in comfortably. Notice the position of your body and slowly begin to relax. Focus on your breathing, slow, even breaths. Breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. Just keep breathing. Within each inhale, allow the breath to come a little deeper. With each exhale, feel yourself relax a little more. Breathe in and out. Turn your attention to your head. Focus on the muscles in your forehead and around your eyes. Release any tension in this area. Feel those muscles become smooth and relaxed. Notice any tightness in your jaw and release. Just let the tension go. Let your jaw relax, feeling the relaxation spread through your face and head. Shift your focus to your neck and shoulders. Scan for any tightness. Release the tension. Let your shoulders drop. Feel your neck and shoulders relax, letting go more and more. Feel your upper back slowly releasing, relaxing. Breathe in and out. Focus on your arms and hands. Starting with your fingers, release any tension. Let your hands relax. Feel this relaxation. Slowly move up your wrists, your arms, past your elbows, and into your biceps. Just continue to relax these muscles, letting your arms and hands feel heavy and still. Focus on your chest and abdomen. Notice any tightness or tension and release. Just let that tension go, releasing further and further. Feel yourself breathe a little easier as your upper body relaxes. Breathe in and out. Draw your attention to your lower back. Notice any pressure and release. Let the tension just melt away. Let those muscles relax. Let that relaxation spread into your hips. Feel those muscles loosen and release. Feel yourself settle more comfortably into position as you relax more and more. Shift your focus to your legs. Release any tension in your thighs. Feel the muscles become loose and relaxed. Feel that looseness travel down, past your knees, down your calves, and into your feet. Feel your toes release and let your feet become limp as you relax more and more. Breathe in and out. Take a moment to scan your body from the top of your head to your upper body, your lower body, and down through your toes. Notice any remaining tension or tightness, and just release. Let it go. Breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. Pay attention to how your body feels. Loose and relaxed. Slow, even breathing. Now, I'd like you to imagine yourself sitting on a beach. You are alone and there is no one to disturb you. There is a stretch of white sand in front of you leading to the water. There are palm trees on either side of you, and you can see their shadows in the sand. Slowly gaze upward, seeing a deep blue sky with a few wispy white clouds floating here and there. Perhaps you occasionally see a bird fly overhead in the distance. Feel the warmth of the sun as it shines on your face and neck, your shoulders and chest. Your breathing becomes a bit slower as you relax, feeling the warmth of the sun spreading over you. Feel yourself settle in, relaxing more and more as the sunlight spreads across your body. Shift your gaze out towards the water. Notice the different shades of blue and green, how the colors change and become darker closer to the horizon. See the bright green leaves of the palm trees and their tall, narrow trunks. Listen to the slight rustle of the trees as their leaves sway in the breeze. Feel the light breeze on your face and body. Breathe in the fresh air and notice the smell of the seawater. Watch the small, gentle waves roll in and out. Seeing each wave slowly break as it reaches the shore. Hear the soft sound of the waves as they continue to roll in and out, in and out. Feel your body slowly letting go of any last bit of tension as you continue to watch the rhythm of the waves. Continue to take in the warmth of the sun, the colors of the water, the sounds of the waves. Feel how relaxed your body is as you sit on the beach, calm and peaceful, letting go of any last bit of stress. Just continue to take slow, easy breaths in and out as you relax more and more. Focus on your slow, easy breathing as you continue to watch the waves. Take another moment to enjoy these peaceful feelings noticing how light and relaxed your body feels. As you get ready to leave this image of sitting on the beach, try to keep this feeling of relaxation with you. Breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. Just continue with the easy breathing, and when you feel ready, slowly open your eyes and focus on the surroundings in your room. All right. So I just ask everyone to quickly check in on their stress level again and see where you are between that 0 and 10. And then we'll go ahead and just see kind of how everybody responded to that. Just need another minute or so to get the results. Okay, excellent, excellent. Looks like the vast majority felt at least a little more or a lot more relaxed, and that's excellent. For those who felt the same or felt a bit more stressed, just a couple things to keep in mind. So for individuals who've been dealing with a fair amount of stress for an extended period of time, sometimes relaxation actually starts to feel very unfamiliar to your body because it's been a while since it's been relaxed. And our body tends to respond to the unknown and unfamiliar with stress. So it's not uncommon when folks start doing relaxation techniques, they do sometimes notice that that stress tends to pop up when they get started. And again, that is something that with practice typically dissipates over time. The other thing to keep in mind is if you didn't notice a significant shift in your stress level or you feel more or less the same, a couple things. There really is a huge practice effect with all of these techniques. The guided imagery technique is the most advanced technique that we've done of the 3 techniques that we've used in here. So this is probably the one where we would see the greatest practice effect as individuals just kind of get better at it and your body gets better at it over time. But the other thing to keep in mind for the individuals who maybe potentially feel the same or felt a bit more stressed is that one of the reasons that we used a range of relaxation techniques in here is because we know that not everyone is going to be equally effective for every person. And we definitely want you to have a range of techniques to choose from and to decide what works best for you. So please keep that in mind also. If imagery just ends up not being the best relaxation technique for you, some of the others that we covered may be a bit of a better option. All right. Okay, everybody. Well, we've got about 10 minutes left. So I did want to open it up as an opportunity for people to ask questions or comment in the chat.
Megan, people sometimes like to determine how relevant it is personally for the presenter. So would you be willing to share your routine, what you do on a daily, weekly basis?
In terms of relaxation?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I tend to prefer 2 of the apps that I mentioned for folks last week when we were on were called Headspace and Calm. And I like utilizing both of those if I'm going to try to do a kind of more focused relaxation technique. And especially I tend to do better with guided techniques if I'm listening to somebody kind of guide me through. I am not great at guiding myself through because of that mind chatter. I have a very hard time shutting down my mind. So I do much better if somebody's guiding me through. So those are 2 apps that I've used over the years and that I've liked. And I also like that they have a range of techniques depending upon how much time I think I want to dedicate or realistically can dedicate in a given moment. So those are 2 that I like. COVID Coach, one of the other apps that we recommended, one of the things I like about that one is that it actually gives a very wide range of techniques, included guided imagery. They do 3 different guided imagery techniques on there with kind of different imagery. And I personally really like imagery. I respond really well to it. I can really get into it in terms of using my imagination to put myself there. So that's something that probably of all of these, imagery and breathing are probably the 2 that I use the most. I don't know that I have a set routine in terms of, I always do it every morning when I get up, or I always do it every night when I go to bed. I will go through fits and spurts. There's times when I'm certainly more on top of it than others in terms of carving out time to try to dedicate to it at some point during the day or before bed as kind of part of my nightly routine. So I would just, like I said, say over the years, I've found through trial and error some specific apps, some specific techniques that work better for me than others. But I also want to kind of be realistic about this, because I think that one of the hardest things with practicing relaxation techniques is we don't want the difficulties practicing to end up contributing to stress. We also don't want to end up in a position where we're kind of criticizing ourselves or getting down on ourselves for maybe not getting in as much practice as we hope or as we intend. I can honestly say probably every year for the past 10 years, one of my New Year's intention is I'm going to meditate every morning, every day of the week for this year. And I have yet to even come close to achieving that. So I just want people to be really realistic about their expectations. I think the bottom line is we do the best we can with what we have. Any time that you carve out, whether it's once a day, once a week, twice a week, that is time that you're investing in your mental health. And that's something to value and be proud of. So that's the other thing I always want to drive home with all these recommendations for practice. It is important to learn the skills, but we also need to be realistic about people's time, attention span, efforts, etc., and kind of just be able to do the best we can.
Megan, we have a comment in the chat. Thank you. The information, resources, and experiential component are all excellent. Great presentation, Megan.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. The question that I have for you also is that, is the script that you read from included in the resources?
So the actual script that I read from isn't, because this is one I had just sort of developed myself. I adapted it from a couple different relaxation books. Today's video will be uploaded onto YouTube. So you will have essentially this recording on YouTube that you can utilize. I've also in the resources for today included the link to that particular app, COVID Coach, which does have 3 guided imagery techniques on there as well. So that's another resource if you want the kind of recording to be able to listen to.
Excellent. See, I would like to ask you too, Megan, if I think it was so great that you made this feel guilt-free. So if you're not able to do it every day, or if you don't even get the half of a month, it's really okay. But your focus was on taking care of your mental health. So would you say more about the importance of finding a way to be aware of your stress level and taking some steps to address it?
So I think when we talk in terms of stress, normally the general rule of thumb in terms of has stress reached a point where I need to be able to do something about it is if we see that it's really starting to interfere with your day-to-day life, whether, God, the stress is getting so overwhelming, I just can't get things done like I used to. The stress is so overwhelming, I just can't focus and just keep bouncing from kind of task to task. When the stress or the sleep issues or whatever domain we're talking about, when that really starts to get in the way of you doing what you want or need to do, that's usually a pretty good indication that being able to find a way to kind of decrease that stress and manage that stress a little better could be helpful to you. In terms of actual what to implement and how often to implement it, this is where a lot's going to come down to where it becomes very individualized. Our goal with this series was really to give people a variety of options to be able to kind of try out and choose from and see what works best for you. But I want to be fair, there's so many options out there these days between the various apps, just doing a basic Google search on some of these procedures and finding other websites or clinics or university programs that sometimes offer links to videos about some of these different relaxation techniques or guided exercises in some of those relaxation techniques. So there certainly are a wide range of options out there beyond kind of what we've offered through here over the past 3 days. I think the biggest thing is finding something that works for you. And I do think there needs to be a certain level of enjoyment with it. I think that if you're trying to force yourself to do a relaxation technique that just doesn't fit for you, it's just not a good match, that's really going to decrease your motivation to do it and kind of your investment in doing it. So I think that's another, we have lots of things that are effective and research shows us that they're effective, but we still need that personal piece of what's really going to work best for you, that you're going to be willing to carve out that time and invest in that time because you know you're going to get a benefit from it.
Great, Megan, thank you so much. We have time for just one last question before some closing thoughts from you. You had mentioned in the didactic portion of the presentation today that there are evidence-based interventions for complicated grief. If somebody is feeling like they need to talk to someone, can you share just a little bit with us about what the evidence is and what interventions are considered to be best if complicated grief is at hand?
Yeah, so with complicated grief, and here's the thing to remember about this, complicated grief is not yet a clinical diagnosable condition. There are a couple other I guess we would consider them grief disorders or bereavement disorders that are included in like the DSM or the ICD, our kind of diagnostic manuals. Complicated grief is really a clinical phenomenon that the field has noticed, and there is kind of a movement to try to get this included as a potential diagnosis, just to help kind of clarify this and offer more treatment. The evidence-based treatment for complicated grief is just simply called CGT, complicated grief therapy. It's pulled from interpersonal psychotherapy and cognitive behavioral psychotherapy. So it kind of pulls from those two different types of therapy. It's a 16-session model, and it focuses on a couple different components. For anybody who's familiar with exposure therapy for trauma, it does have somewhat of an exposure component where part of it is really helping that individual kind of talk through the loss multiple times as a way to really engage the emotions and kind of process the information. But it also has a component that really focuses on relationships and goals and kind of moving forward in the day-to-day life. So that is kind of the leading evidence-based treatment for complicated grief to date. It's called CGT, and just a basic Google search or lit search on it, you'll be able to pull up some of the studies and articles that have shown its effectiveness in some of the treatment outcome studies.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So we are at 1 minute to the hour. That gives us just a second for closing thoughts or anything that you wanted to send this group out with.
Well, again, I just want to say thank you just so much to everyone who has joined us over the past couple weeks, to all of our health professionals. We did this because we really wanted to make a gesture to show how much we appreciate all that you're doing and how much we value you. So thank you again for helping all of us navigate this pandemic. For everyone else who has joined us, wonderful to see so many people invested in their health. We appreciate you trusting us enough to kind of lead you down this path over the past several weeks. I certainly hope everyone has a safe and happy holiday, and I hope that you will certainly consider joining us again in 2021 for Open Classroom. So thank you again, everyone. We so appreciate you choosing to spend your time with us over these past 3 weeks.
Ditto to all of that, Megan. That was so beautifully said. You leave me nothing else to say except thank you for giving your time to be with us, and thanks to Cynthia. I appreciate the opportunity to work with you both, and wish everybody happy, healthy, safe holidays. and better 2021 for all of us. I hope to see you then.